But if you haven't already, feel free to set up your paints. I would recommend that if you have any newspaper or an old towel or something you don't care about ruining, lay that down first on your table or wherever you're sitting and setting up. That way, if you accidentally get acrylic paint on it, you won't care as much because it'll be protected. So for the few of you that just joined us, I was just saying that now is like a perfect time to set up all of the items you got in your kit, and that if you have any extra newspaper or an old towel that you don't care about, put that down to protect your table or wherever you're sitting. So when you set out your acrylic paints, if you accidentally get it on something, it's on like newspaper or a towel you don't care about. So that way you're not ruining your clothes and you're just you're protecting your area.
You want to get some plastic for the tabs here?
Hi, Katie.
Hi.
It's Kim Karras. I have my friend here too.
Hi, Katie.
Oh, good. Hi. Kim was.
I'll mute us now, but you know we're here.
Okay, good. Thanks for joining me tonight.
No problem.
So if you haven't opened your kit, I don't know about you, but if I were to pick up something, I'd open it instantly when I got it. But if you were super patient and you waited until now, go ahead and open up your kit. You can set up all of your paints. I'm going to talk for a bit. If you've joined me for my previous watercolor classes, I'm going to share quite a bit of information before we actually paint. But now is a really good time to set everything up. So just make sure you put something down that's going to protect your furniture, especially if it's a really nice table. So I think all of you know my name is Katie. I'm a librarian here at LTPL. So I do a lot of the adult programs and events. So I actually get to share that privilege with Pam, who does a lot of the gardening and sustainability programs here, and then Kathy, who runs all of the genealogy programs. It's a lot of fun. And this is an informal class, so feel free to unmute yourself if you're muted at any point and interrupt me while I'm talking. It doesn't bother me at all. But if you don't feel like using your speaker, or if you don't have one, there is a chat button feature of Zoom. So if you kind of hover your mouse over the bottom of the Zoom area, there should be a little button for chat. Just click on that and then you can type in a little chat box. While I'm doing the presentation, I'm going to be sharing my screen, so I may not see what you type right away, but once I'm done with the PowerPoint, I'll see what you typed and I'll answer your questions. So let's see. Oh, in addition to newspaper or an old towel, an old t-shirt is also really good for protecting either yourself or your furniture if you put that down as you're setting up. Another really good thing is, if you don't have any of that, is a large garbage bag. So if you have like a 5-gallon or a 10-gallon garbage bag, you can put that down instead. If you're worried about what you're wearing right now, you may want to put an old shirt on. Just protect yourself. I wouldn't want anyone to accidentally ruin something they're wearing. I mean, I only gave you a little tiny bit of paint, but it's always best to be prepared, and I'm a klutz, so I know I'm gonna get it on me at some point, usually. Acrylic paints are water soluble until they become dry. So they are difficult to get out of cloth, and that's why I keep telling you should put something down and protect yourself. We are just learning today, so please don't put pressure or high expectations on yourself to create a perfect masterpiece. We want to focus on fun and a little bit of experimenting. All right, so now I'm going to share my screen, and just bear with me. I am working with dual monitors, so I might lose my mouse for a little bit of this. I think with each one I do, though, I'm getting a little bit faster with it, so just bear with me. Okay. So if you did have the kit, the notes are in the kit, so you can take that out. If you want to write on it, you're welcome to. That's for you to keep or to throw away or recycle. Okay, so I want to give you a little background information and tips on acrylic paint and how it differs from watercolor and oil paint, and then we'll go ahead and actually paint. So why use acrylic paint? Well, it's one of the lesser toxic paints. It's very versatile and it dries water resistant. So you can paint in layers without disturbing an underlying dried paint. They're not high maintenance like oil painting, and you can work very fast using acrylics either as they are, or you can mix them with a variety of mediums. So what the mediums do is they can alter the qualities of the acrylic paint, and you can, depending on which one you're using, you can extend the drying time of the acrylic paint. So in the past, artists used to have to mix their own pigments. So it was pricey and time consuming, but they had more control over their paints. Now acrylics have just improved over time because the plastic that acrylic paint is made with has become more refined. Acrylic paints are now more bright. They're brighter, they're more saturated, and thus more accepted in the art field. They used to contain less pigment, were very matte and chalky, so it's awesome that we've had all of these improvements over time. Now, I've seen a lot of professional artists actually prefer acrylic paint over oil, and it's because it is versatile and dries fast, and it allows them to work really quickly. Also, there are a lot of photorealists out there who use acrylic paint just for that reason. But you can also get very abstract with it as well. All right, so while using oil paint can get very costly and require expensive supplies, acrylics don't require the same kind of supplies or maintenance. Along with watercolor painting. Watercolor can get as cheap or expensive as you make it, and actually that really goes for all of the paints. So to begin with, you really just need a prepared surface like a stretched canvas that is pre-gessoed, a few paints. So technically all you really need to start with are the three primary colors, which is red, blue, and yellow. And at least 2 paint brushes. I would say at least 2 because if you get 2 different sizes, then you're pretty much covered. And then last but not least, super important is soap for cleaning your brushes. They have paint soap for brushes specifically, but I just use Dawn soap. There's no reason to get crazy with the expense, but That's the bare supplies necessary for painting with acrylics. It's useful to have an actual palette, and they have some containers where it's sealable so it'll keep your paint fresher longer, but it's not necessary. And then it's a convenience to have an easel. So most people have a flat surface. Some artists like to paint standing up. Also with an easel, you can get super close to what you're working on, but then you can also like take 10 steps away and look at where you're painting, and it can look different from different, however close or however far away you get from your painting. So I will go more into depth about the supplies in the following slides. All right, so with canvas, it can get a little pricey depending on how you prepare it, if you do it yourself or if you buy a pre-stretched and gessoed canvas. So some of the stores will offer some cheaper alternatives. There's also board that's been pre-gessoed. And then there are these mixed media sheets which you can purchase. Now, depending on the type of paper that you're getting, I would just recommend being a little bit cognizant of how much paint you're putting on the paper, just because it can cause the paper to like buckle or crack even. And so I recommend canvas and boards over the mixed media papers that say you can paint on them. But if you're painting with watercolor, then it's good to use watercolor paper or the mixed media paper. But with acrylic and oil paint, you want to make sure you're using something heavy duty. I have stretched my own canvases before, so if that's something that you're interested in learning more about, I'm happy to answer any questions. You can just bring them up towards the end of the class. That way, if anyone's not really interested in that, we'll just save that for then. With brushes, natural versus synthetic is better. I could talk at length about the different sizes and qualities of brushes, but you only really need like a flat brush, maybe one that's a little bit shorter, and then a round brush to start with. Now, depending on the sizes, that really matters only if you're going to paint on a bigger area of canvas, but I recommend for beginners to just keep your canvas small, like the painting area size small. That way you're not overwhelmed with the amount of white you're looking at, and that it's a little more containable as far as your composition and the amount of paint that you're using to paint. All right, so this, I believe, is one of the more important aspects when it comes to acrylic painting, and it's paints, because there are so many brands to choose from. And I actually have a couple of brands here today. And the one that I gave you in the kit is called Sax. And it's this heavy-bodied acrylic here. So I got it in a quart size, but you can actually, if you plan on doing a lot of painting, you can get it in bigger gallon jugs, or you can get it in a tube, depending on the ounces. And this is Liquitex here. So this is one of the more common brands that you might find at like Blake's Art or Michael's or Joann's. But some of the more pricey ones are made of a higher quality, and they contain more pigment, and the more pigment that you have, the better the paints are when you mix them. So professional grade acrylics have the most, which allow for more medium manipulation. It also limits the muddying when you go to mix the colors, or the shifting of colors when they dry. So some of the acrylic paints, they start out looking a lot brighter, and then once they dry, they get darker. So the varieties are heavy body, which is this thicker paint. There's a medium fluid, also known as soft body or high flow. There's open. There's also acrylic gouache, and then there's craft acrylic paint, which you might find more common at stores like Meijer or Walmart. And then some of the brands are for like the professional grade and also student. I'm sorry, is there a question? Oh, I thought I heard something. Okay. With the professional or the student grade kind, they can get a little more costly, but if you plan on painting for a really long time, it's good to invest in some higher quality paints. And so some of the brands that are a little more pricey but worth the quality is Winsor & Newton. I offered, here's Liquitex, but this is more student grade and not professional grade. There's also Blick Studio. If anyone's familiar with Golden, that's also a more common one. There's also Utrecht, which I believe all the stores closed in Michigan, so it might only be found online unless they went out of business. There's also Sennelier, Chroma Atelier, M. Graham, Dollar Rowney, and Matisse. But that's just like a small snapshot of the brands that are out there. All right, so with acrylic paints comes the whole slew of mediums that you can experiment with, and depending on how you want your painting to look once it's dried, you can use a gloss medium, so it just makes it more shiny once it's dried. There's a matte medium, which removes the shine from the paint. You can also mix mediums together with acrylic. They all are compatible. So you want to make sure that when you're purchasing mediums, you're only purchasing acrylic mediums and not oil, just because the chemicals in them differ and it's not compatible with acrylic paints. And just in case you're curious, impasto is one of the terms that is used often in acrylic and also oil painting. And it's a process or technique of layering on paint super thick so that it stands out from the surface. So if you ever make a visit to the DIA, I encourage you, obviously you can't stand too close to the paintings because the security guards will say something, but if you can see like the globs of paint and the outlines of how thick it is from far away, you can that's impasto. That artist painted it super thick. So glazing medium makes the paint more transparent so you can see all the layers beneath that you're painting on top of. It can create some really cool qualities in your painting, and it can also help you make acrylic paint mimic watercolors. So one of the ways to make acrylic paint mimic watercolors is either using a medium or mixing it with water. So in this case, with acrylic paint, it doesn't matter how much you're using, except for you're losing some of the pigment as you mix the medium or mix the water in with the acrylic paint. So Jello Medium is like a thick paste-like gel, and it's also used for impasto. You don't necessarily have to mix a medium with the acrylic paint to get impasto. You could just use the acrylic paint by itself and just glob it on pretty thick with your brush strokes. But you can also do it and spare your pigment by using the gel medium. And there are a variety of textures available out there. I have not used all of them, so I don't really know how they all react with the paint. I was a little more of a purist, so I only used like maybe 1 or 2 mediums, like the matte medium, and that was about it. With modeling paste, that can also be used for impasto, but you can also do all kinds of like experimental things with your painting. You can build up on your painting and sculpt too. Some people like to get really, I wouldn't say crazy, but experimental. And they end up, it's not just painting anymore, it's more 3D, and it's about the experience of what they're painting instead of just the content. So it's about invoking some kind of sense or feeling or emotion out of their viewers instead of just relying on the content. With texture gels, I've never used these, but again, I encourage you to experiment. They can do a lot of really cool, like textural things with your acrylic paints. If you're going for something more realistic, you may want to try adding some of the texture gels into your painting. So the retarding medium is what slows down the drying time of your acrylic paint. So if you don't want it to dry as fast, you would add some of this to that. It can also help with like mixing and making the mixes more smooth with blending. Another note is that on your palette, if you have one, you always want to make sure that you mix your colors first on your palette area before you put it on the canvas. You never want to mix on the canvas, whereas with watercolor you can do that, and then some oil painters like to do it too, but they have a better handle on that as well. So they do it to achieve a certain result. Flow improver is just something that can also help extend the paint over larger areas, but with beginners, I recommend just using a smaller surface area or smaller canvas to paint so that you're not overwhelmed or intimidated by what you're painting. There are also additives, but I recommend just holding off on using those. They're a little more complicated, and as beginners, I mean, they're out there and you can definitely learn about them, but I would just use caution and hold off on that until you feel more comfortable using acrylic paints themselves. So some more tips are, oh, I've already said some of these. So mix your colors or mix in medium before you put it on the canvas. Don't use oil mediums with acrylics, they're not compatible. Some medium products claim they can be used to varnish your paintings, but just get a actual removable varnish instead. Don't use a medium, even if it says it's a varnish. And when it comes to mediums with brands, there's really no like difference, so it doesn't matter what brand you get because they're all made with the same chemicals. Again, if you have any children around, make sure they're not touching this and then touching their face, because you don't want them to consume it. It could harm them. Okay, so with colors, the best ones to start off with, if you don't want to buy like a set, are yellow, red, and blue. And with acrylic paints, the colors get a little more complicated because they all have these weird names, and they can get a little more specific. So there's so many out there to choose from, and some of them can have different tints or hues to them. So I recommend that the best ones to start with would be the phthalo blue, cadmium yellow, and if you want like a brighter red, the cadmium red, but there's also that alizarin crimson, any crimson, depending on how like super bright red or how dark red you want your red to be. So when you're mixing, that way you're getting like pure secondary colors. If you start with phthalo blue, cadmium yellow, and cadmium red, you'll get a better orange, a better green, and a better purple or violet. So I do want to just share a note about black. Premixed black can tend to be too dark, too contrasting and overpowering in some paintings. And I remember when I was first learning and my teacher would be like, stop using pure black. You can actually mix your own black and it's a lot of fun. So when possible, try to make your own. A good alternative is to mix your complementary colors. So like any opposites on the color wheel. So orange and blue, And I would always recommend mixing an extra darker color in with the complements and not relying on just the two, just because you are gonna get a little hue of like yellow or blue or red in there. And if you want it to be a little more dark, then get like a brown or your secondary or tertiary colors added in there, and that will help with it. Also, paint colors can vary by tone, saturation, viscosity, and then also what they look like when they dry, so they can change. You can always do like a color reference sheet or a wheel to check your colors before engaging in your actual painting. And that way you know exactly what it looks like before you've committed paint to canvas. So that can save you some frustration and heartache later. So blues, the names can vary. Some blues can say cyan and it's a little bit brighter and a little green. Ultramarine, which is also like a bright but super baby blue. And then the phthalo, which is like a richer, darker blue. Same with red. There's magenta, which can have like a slight purple tint to it. Crimson, which is more blood red. And then there's that cadmium light red, which is like that super bright, pure red. So I'm not going to read this slide. It's just that some of the colors are more expensive than others. And then if you're really interested, a lot of the colors have the color index number on them somewhere on the tube. And if you're interested, you can look up the color index, and what it is an indicator of what's in that tube of paint. So it tells you exactly what the pigment is and the chemical compound present. So for example, a cadmium red is a PR108, and it just tells you if it's already been pre-mixed with pigments or if it's like the pure color there. Here's another thing to be aware of when you're buying paints is the permanence. So over time, if you've painted something you absolutely love, you want to hang on to it and you've hung it on your wall, are the colors going to fade? So that's what the permanence is about. So viscosity has to do with the consistency or thickness of paint. So heavy body acrylics have a thicker consistency, like the Saks paint that I've given you in the kit. The fluid ones are thinner, and so they're a little more transparent. So when you're working with layers, you might be able to see more of what you're doing. And just knowing what the qualities of your paint are can help you with what you intend to paint. So if you want something that looks more like watercolors, maybe fluid or acrylics are the way to go for you. But if you're interested in more of like a very like heavy impasto type, then you want the heavy body acrylics. So here's like a visual of all the different acrylic paints that are available out there. All right, so before you paint, it's always important to set everything up. That way you don't have to interrupt your painting to get something that you forgot, walk away, your paint ends up drying. Usually isn't that fast. Sometimes it can be depending on how much you have set up on your palette. For instance, in this photo, this person has little dabs of paint all around this glass palette. A lot of people have a preference. They might, if you're familiar with Bob Ross, he used like the actual, that oval with the thumb hole in it so he could hold it while he was painting. But some artists like to use glass or plastic, and they walk away from their palette. They don't actually carry it with them. So it's just personal preference. And again, I like to reiterate proper protection for your clothing and or furniture because lots of happy accidents as far as like ruining clothing have happened in my experience with painting with acrylic paints. Okay, so I'm not really gonna go over this because this class we're not gonna do a whole lot of like worrying about distance or anything. We're gonna do a lot of flat colors. So this is for you to read. Hopefully the PowerPoint isn't too small for you, but basically it's just some principles of art to go over. And this one just talks about composition. So with the canvas that you received in the kit, it's blank, but it is possible if you want to set up your composition with a little bit of help, you can draw a grid and it can help you with placement of the image on the canvas. So it's okay to draw on your canvas with pencil, and you don't even really have to erase it if you don't want to. It's a little bit harder if you press too hard to erase, but if you do it lightly, if you want to erase it, you can, but the acrylic should be thick enough that it's gonna cover that up anyway. Now, some artists will do an under painting first. So they might do, for instance, like a shade of blue to start with, or like a shade of brown or a light purple, and that's considered the under painting. And if you've ever looked at like art restorers, they will sometimes have to fix some of the old famous paintings, and sometimes when they remove paintings, they find paintings underneath. So some of the artists under painting can have like all kinds of details that when working with layers will just really improve the painting over time, or get lost, because sometimes the famous painters hated what they did. They let it dry, they gessoed over it, and then they started again. So it's fun to paint with acrylic, because if you make a mistake, you can fix it. You can fix it just in a little area, or you can fix it by completely starting over from beginning. So, all right. As far as composition goes, do large shapes and then move to fine details. So when you're actually going into paint, you want to work with the large areas first and then move into fine details. That way you're not covering something up. Blending again should be done on your palette. Many acrylic painters will keep a spray bottle of water next to them and spritz their acrylic paints with them as they work. That just keeps the paint moist. And then sometimes artists don't even do like a drawing on their canvas to prepare. They'll just have the image of it pasted up somewhere next to their canvas for reference. So it's really your own personal preference how you want to do that. We're not going to talk about negative space. I talked a little bit about color theory. So your primary colors are red, yellow, blue, most important colors to have when you're starting with paint. To get your secondary colors, if you don't want to purchase them, red and yellow make orange, yellow and blue make green, and red and blue make purple. And then your primary and secondary colors, when mixed together, make a tertiary color. So if you're ever interested, especially with the kinds of paint that you purchase, you can make your own color wheel and then see how the paint mixes with your primary colors, or if you buy the pre-made secondary or tertiary colors. If you mix your acrylics together in a color wheel, you can see what it looks like. These are just some schemes. So analogous is when you're working closely together on the color wheel. Monochromatic is in one color and you're just using different shades of it. And then complementary is when they're opposite on the color wheel. And a triad is when you're using the three. So it could be all the primary colors. It could be all of the secondary colors. And complementary usually are like a primary and a secondary color that are opposite on the color wheel. We're not going to use perspective. So now the moment you've all been waiting for. Now I have a blank canvas because I was gonna just start over from the beginning. If you have a ruler, you can measure out equal distance on your canvas, and that way you can do the grid, so it helps you draw the image of the mug and saucer with the steam on it. So if you're not a drawer, this is just a method to use that'll make it a little bit easier for you. But if you like to live dangerously, you can do a sketch. So what I'm gonna do now at this point is I'm gonna move the camera over to this little phone stand here so you can see my hands and my canvas. So if you have any sensitivity to motion, just look away from the computer while I do that, and then I'll let you know when it's ready, because I don't want anyone to get sick or anything. So I'm gonna do that now. I'm gonna stop. Oh no. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I have the camera now above my canvas area. So if you did look away, it's safe to look now. Just let me know if it's hard to see what I'm doing. But if you're creating the grid, I used a 12-inch ruler, and I did it, so the little canvas board that you're using is 4 by 6. And what I did was I broke it up into a little less than 1.5 inches to get the equidistant squares on this side with the 4 inches, and then on the 6 inches I did it 1.5 inches apart. Now it doesn't matter so much with these images, but technically when you're working from a photo and you're doing a grid, you want to make sure that it's scalable. But I just did what was close enough. So if you have 3, 6, 9, 12 squares on the image, you want to have 12 squares on your canvas too, because you want it to match up with where you're going to be drawing the areas in each square. So I actually did like a 7-foot by 5-foot acrylic painting of a woodpecker, and my dad has that at home in his hallway, and it takes up the entire like end of the hallway wall. All right, so we're gonna sketch the mug and saucer, and with sketching, it doesn't have to be perfect. Another option is to make this into a template, so you can always get like one of those harder pieces of like protective plastic, or get like the foam core, and you can trace if you have like a light box, not with the foam core though, that's a little more difficult. But if you have a light box and you got the harder paper, sorry, I'm having a brain fart, you can trace the outline of the image and then cut that out and put it down on your canvas and then trace that too. So that's just another option. But I'm going to start with the middle here, just because I want to make sure I have enough space in the top portion of the image and the bottom portion of the image for the rest of it. So my oval for the mug is about here. And then I'm going to do the body of the mug now. So this doesn't have to be perfect. We're just eyeballing it. And with sketching, you want to be working on your area, but looking at the image at the same time. Okay, So I have the body of my mug here. Now I'm gonna do the handle. So what I'm gonna do is eyeball little areas where it attaches to the body of the mug. I'm gonna do just little circles there. Then I'm going to do these like open ovals in a motion here. So just like a quick impression of the handle and connect the outer areas of these circles that I put on the body. And then I'm just gonna come in a little bit from the circle into the handle a little bit here, and also come in a little bit on the top part of the handle, and then just do like a quick connection there. Mine doesn't perfectly match the drawing, and honestly, that's okay. It doesn't have to be exact as the image. All right, so now, and just let me know if I'm moving too fast. Well, I do see there's a chat. How long can you store paint opened or closed? So it's important to make sure you always keep your paint closed, just because you're paying money for the paint and you don't want to lose any of it. If it dries, you can no longer use it. I actually have had tubes of paint much smaller than this that I forgot about in my little satchel, and I tell you, it was only like this long and this wide. The whole thing dried. So that was like 10 bucks that I'm not gonna get back. So you wanna make sure you close your tubes of paint or the canisters that they're kept in. And then if you're using the palette boxes that have the lids on them, that's best if you're storing your palette, because if it's closed off, the only air that that paint is exposed to is the one that you close the paint in there in that palette. It stays better longer. It may develop like a little film over the top of it, but it's still usable. So you want to make sure that you only use a little paint at a time. That way you're not wasting your paint. And then if you want to preserve your paint, they use like a closed palette box. So that way, you know, you're not wasting your money. All right. And I say with acrylic paint, depending on how much you poured out, if it's less, it's gonna dry faster. If it's more, the inner part, once you get past that dried film, that's gonna be usable. But that dried paint will show up on your brush. So that's just something to be aware of, especially if you don't want it to look globby on your canvas. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the saucer, and I'm gonna do about the same thing that I did with the top of the mug here. So I'm just gonna do like, I wanna make sure I start with the saucer a little up in the body of the mug here. So I'm gonna go for about right here, and we wanna make sure that line matches up on the other side, because you don't, I mean, the mug's in the way, but with perspective, sometimes you can lose that line or it starts somewhere else and then that just doesn't look right. But if you're going for like something more abstract, that's okay. So we're gonna start about right here, and then the bottom of the mug is sitting in the saucer. So we're going to bring the line so it covers a little bit of the bottom. So I'm gonna bring it out. And we have like a steep curve here, and we're passing the bottom of the mug, and then here's the other side, and you know, the saucer is still going, so it doesn't end just because the mug is there. So we're going to connect these two sides together, and if you end up drawing in the handle or in the body of the mug, that's okay, because you're gonna paint over the pencil anyway. All right, now we're gonna do the bottom part of the body of the saucer, and then the little edge here that it rests on. So we're just gonna bring this side down and this side down to about here. So I'm just gonna do like a quick swooping sketch here. And it doesn't, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And this is about halfway. So you see you come in a little bit for the bottom of the saucer here. So this is about halfway, and then I want the bottom of the saucer to start about there. So we're gonna come out a little bit, and it's gonna be more of like a half an oval. Okay. Now, with the seam, this, you don't really have to get proportions right with the seam. You can just have fun with this. So if you're not a drawer, you can just try and copy exactly what's printed here. Or if you want to get creative, you can do something slightly different. So we're gonna start, it's about in the middle here. I'm gonna do this outside line first here. And I'm just gonna kind of lightly get this curvy line going here. And then I'm gonna do this line now, this thicker one. So here, it doesn't have to be exact. All right, so I just did this line, and I know this comes out a little bit below that. So I'm gonna start that line just a little bit down, and we're gonna come around here. And then that disappears down into the mug. Now I wouldn't get too detailed here with these smaller lines just because we're limited by the brushes we have, and we're not gonna get that detailed. So I'm not gonna add those little lines in. But I do wanna get this thick line here for the outside of the seam. So I'm gonna start about here for this, the beginning of this line here, and then end about here. So we're just gonna go like that. Okay. Are there any questions so far? So this was my sketch and this was my grid here. And then I added, on my grid one, I put coffee first. If there's like a phrase you want to do, don't draw that on there now. Wait until you've painted it and then it has dried. But I just wanted to show you that you have options. So you can do coffee first, you can do I love coffee, or if you love tea, or if you love hot chocolate, or something similar. Okay, I don't need this anymore because we're not actually looking at colors, so I'm putting this away. Now I did, because this came in like a pack, you got green. We may not even use it. And then I have my water here. So with acrylic paint, I like to have more water. So one for cleaning my brush, and then if I end up using the water for something, and that's just in case. So once you start to get more comfortable and experienced with acrylic painting, then you can decide how much water you want to have. Okay. So I am going to do, and you can decide what color you want, but I'm going to paint my mug red. And I might have like, I might want to have a little bit of like an orange up here at the top. You've seen those glazes that they've done on mugs. So I'm going to mix a little bit of orange, but I want it to have more red in it. So I'm gonna get my red here. And then just because right now I don't really care about my paint, I'm going to just go ahead and stick my paintbrush that has some red in it in a little tiny corner of the yellow here. But if you're worried about it messing with the color of your yellow, then you may want to clean your brush in between. Okay. So I like that. It looks a little more pink, not quite so orange. So I'm just gonna get a little more, just a little more yellow and mix it. Okay, and then I wanna be careful here. I have a little acrylic that was building up right here at the edge. So I'm gonna follow this line here and bring it down. Now, don't worry if you lose your sketched lines. Try to stay in them as much as possible. All right, so that's the mixed paint there. I'm gonna clean my brush now because I'm gonna use the red again. And now I'm just gonna grab a little bit of red here. So I'm starting with the bottom and gonna bring it up because I don't want this paint to mix with this paint until I get up here to the edge. Okay, so now that I've gotten it pretty close, I'm gonna go ahead and connect them. There we go. So in the back part of the mug, I want my red to be a little bit darker. So again, I'm gonna take some more red out of here and I'm gonna add a little bit of blue. So I'm not gonna, I recommend cleaning your brush in between, but for right now, it's not as big a deal. So I'm just gonna make sure I just come from the edge there and not straight from the middle of my blue to keep that pure. So I'm just adding a little bit of blue to my red. Just make it into a darker red. And I might have, it looks like I grabbed too much blue, but that's okay. All right, so now I'm gonna do the inside edge of the mug and try to leave the steam. And then I wanna make sure I leave a little bit of white down there for whatever I'm drinking. For me, it's coffee. For you, it could be, it might be like a yellow green if you do tea, or a brown if you like hot chocolate. It doesn't have to be coffee.
Hi, Kathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to show mine.
Oh, good. Oh, wow. Oh, I like that.
Thank you.
That's really pretty. And I like the color choice for the yellow mug because there's contrast there between
Yeah,
your
I saw
foreground and
the, yeah, I saw the reference and I did it. We can use these acrylic painting, how long we can use? Like if it's
so as long as it's wet, you can use it. And if there's solvent
okay.
in there, yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. Okay. If you get ahead of me, that's okay. That doesn't really bother me at all. So,
I'm doing a yellow mug too.
oh, good. Okay. I like that. That's great. I just like red. I think it's because I'm cold. The air conditioners are on really high here in the library, so red is kind of like it's warming me up. Okay, so I'm done with the inner part there. I'm just gonna get the excess paint off my brush here, and then I'm gonna clean it. Because now I'm gonna do the saucer and then the handle. Sometimes it's better to do the background first. I was always a bad student and would rush and do the focus point first. So sorry, you're kind of getting some of my bad habits. But you know, just for the future, it's probably better to just start with the background first and then paint the whatever's in the like mid-ground to foreground focus point last, just because you don't want the background paint to mess with your edges, and you don't want it to look like it's in the background. But we're just having fun. All right. So you can tell when you're cleaning out your brush if it still has pigment, if you wipe it down and there's still red coming out when you're wiping it. So it's not safe to use. But that's only if you want to switch to another color. All right, so with the saucer, I think I'm going to do a lighter purple. So I'm going to use this purple I mixed, but add some more of the red to it. And then I think I'm gonna add just a little, just like a tiny dab of yellow. But you can do what you want if you chose different colors. Honestly, you can't mess up in this right now because this is for fun. Okay. All right, so I like that color. I know it's kind of dark on the camera, but I'm gonna start painting the back part of the saucer first. And I think it needs just a little more yellow here. Okay, so if you, I believe I included like a smaller tipped brush. You could use that to do these smaller areas. But also with your paintbrush, if you use like the tip of it and angle it, you should be able to get those small crevices. Okay, and then I'm going to add more yellow because I want this part of it to be lighter. And I didn't have enough of it last time there. Now, if you get serious about acrylic painting, you may also want to invest in a palette knife. It helps with mixing your colors. And it doesn't get the paint all over your, the hair of your paintbrush. Okay. I'm gonna add a little more yellow to this paint I mixed here. Yeah, that's definitely getting more orange. Now, if you were to look at what you've painted so far, and if you see like there's less shine on it, that part of the painting is starting to dry faster than the other areas. Okay, now I'm going to use this darker bit that I use over here down here for the bottom of my saucer. But I'm not going to clean my brush. Now, if it's not perfect, you can always let it dry and then fix up your edges after. Or you can use like some permanent markers and then do like a mixed media painting. Okay, so I'm just cleaning off the darker paint here from my paintbrush so I can get back into the red. And then I'm going to do the handle. So I did leave some white areas here. I'm going to do a different mix of red there. Okay, that looks okay. Now, if what you painted earlier started to dry, you can do like a layer over it and see what happens. If you don't do it too thick, you should still see some of the brush strokes underneath. So I just add a little red to the top of this purple here. Okay. And then I think this is still wet here, so I'm gonna just mix this a little bit for the bottom inside of my saucer. I'm gonna try and be very careful here because I have all these like close areas where there isn't paint. Okay, So I just want to get a little more darker here because this is actually the inside where the cup isn't resting. And I'm just bringing it up a little. Okay. All right, so because I did a more red focused mug, I think what I'm gonna do for my background is like a green color here. But if you're interested and you don't want to use that green, we can mix blue and yellow together and see what we get. I just want to make sure I get all the red out of my paintbrush first. So it's important if you have nicer paintbrushes that you kind of dab your brush from the side so you're not messing up all the paint bristles. Because then it'll start to fray like these here, and I haven't even used this, but that's because it's a cheaper quality paintbrush. Okay, just because I'm impatient. So now I'm gonna take some yellow from this corner now, just because I wanna make sure I don't get any red in there, and I also wanna leave some in the center. And now I got my yellow here, and I'm gonna take some blue. And again, if you have a palette knife, you can always cut your paint and mix it using the palette knife. It makes it easier. And there's different size palette knives too. If you're a big fan of Bob Ross, you probably saw he has like I think he had a couple that he used regularly. All right, so this is a little bit darker. So what I'm gonna do is, and I don't do it often, but I'm gonna use some white, and then I'm just gonna take like a little tiny bit because white goes a really long way, and I don't know how many times I've mixed and then, you know, I used way too much white and I ended up using more paint than I wanted to. So just like a little tiny bit. And I'm gonna start doing the background here. Now, if you want to get fancy, you don't have to do a flat color for your background. You can do like a gradation. So you start with your green or blue or whatever color you decided, and then mix like a couple different variations of it so you have it already, and then go and paint it in. So you can change the way your background looks if you don't want it to just be flat. So I'm just getting really close to the sketch lines. And for me, I'm not as careful if I'm further away from the sketch lines. Also, this is when it comes in handy to have like newspaper or something down to protect your table. All right, so if it gets helpful and you haven't done so, you can move your canvas around. Just be aware that you might get it on your fingers, but it might help you with the different angles. And then just be aware of your brush strokes too. So if you're getting close to the edges, you want to make sure you have enough paint there so it doesn't leave little white areas. And you can tell that you had to go around the image. So make sure you're using enough paint, and then make sure that you do the brush strokes kind of evenly if you can. And if you need more paint, make sure you grab more paint to do that. So this is a canvas board, but I know with like some of the actual stretch canvas, you're gonna have like a couple inches here. Some artists just paint on this side of it, but others will carry the paint over on the edges. I believe some of that may have to do with like museum requirements, but also could just be personal preference. But because we're painting on boards, you don't have to worry about that right now. If you do get whatever color that you're using in your steam, don't worry, because it will eventually dry. And then whatever color you're using for the steam, you can paint over it. Now with lighter colors, you may see more of what you've painted underneath. It might come out. But if you use the impasto technique and build it up, it should cover it up. All right, so I'm about to do the background in the middle of my handle here, but the paint for the red is still wet. So I'm gonna just be really careful when I go in there. There's like a glob of red right here. I don't want my green to get muddied or turn into a red green. So I'm just trying to be careful here. All right, so I did forget for us to draw the table. So depending on how far down you brought your background, you should probably stop a little bit of, like below the top line of the saucer, just a little bit there, just so you get a little bit of depth, or you can stop above. If you've already brought it down, we can mix like a brown color and just paint over it. Okay, so I know this area here has a little bit of white there. I'm actually gonna go back in a little bit later and put some red, just because I want my mug to be even here on this side, and I brought some green in. But I'm gonna clean my brush now. Okay, I'm gonna actually use this green to make my brown. So I'm gonna take some red. It's gonna take a lot of red. Red and some yellow, but I need more red. And some yellow. I'm just gonna take it from this area where I had taken it before. And I need more yellow. I do a little more yellow. Just add a little more red. And then just a little bit, just a little tiny bit of blue. Okay. And actually, you could add more yellow. So I'm just fixing this edge where I'd gone too far with the green. I'm gonna fix this edge too. If your green or your background color has dried by now, you should be able to paint over it. And then if you can see underneath, you just need to use the impasto and lay it on thick. That's the impasto technique. And if you have enough paint on your paintbrush, it should work just fine. Because you don't want to just be pushing the paint around. Okay. I'm cleaning off my brush again. So for my coffee, I'm actually gonna use some of the black. I have this brown still wet. It's still a little bit wet there. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of black and add it in here. I'm gonna also add a little more red. And just a little bit of black. I think a little more red. Okay, so that's pretty dark. I'm gonna do the coffee. Now, once the coffee dries, the paint that you put down for that, we can do little highlights. I'm gonna add just a little bit more black here. All right, so now I'm not gonna clean my brush. I'm gonna add some yellow here to what I've already mixed. And then I'm gonna use a lot of white for the steam. And I like what this ended up mixing into, so that's what I'm gonna use. It's not pure white. So I'm gonna lose all those pencil lines. So if you're worried about that, it'll be fine. You can always add them back in later with a marker. I'm trying to get all the white out because we don't want the white canvas to show through. We didn't really do an underpainting. Now I'm gonna add some more white because I want this steam to be lighter. And then what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna take my brush and bring a little bit of this different color down in here. And while it's still wet, I'm gonna mix this dark color I still have in here. And so this is a little blending on the canvas. If you want to get some texture in, you could do like some like dabs to make it look a little more puffy. I'm gonna try to keep the white, the pure white on the surface here. Some little dabs, and then some more white. So I'm just fixing my edges. All right. So for the drink, whatever color you use there, you can do like a little highlight. If you can get your tip flat, this way with detail, you know where the paint's going. And I'm just gonna do like a quick little so I just touched the very tip of my brush in a couple little areas there. Now I'm gonna clean my brush out because I wanna fix this red here. All of my mug is pretty much dry except for this little glob of red paint that I left there. That is still wet. All right. So I'm just adding some red in here. I'm just gonna take it directly from the little container. And there. Now, if you have the other brush and it's not so flared out like mine, you could outline everything if you wanted to. You can make like a darker brown. You could just use the black, or you could just wait for everything to dry and just use a permanent marker or a paint marker to add fine details. So I think with the mug, I might do like a light red orange here for like a highlight on the ceramics, because usually your mug is not just like a flat color. There's some shine in certain areas because it reflects the light. So I've pretty much used all the space on my paper plate here, so I'm just gonna tuck that under. All right, so I'm taking some untouched red and some untouched yellow. I'm gonna mix that. And I'm just gonna take just a little bit of white. And we're gonna mix that. So when you start to paint more, painting from photos is fun just because you can like draw on the photos. You can do whatever you want to it. But the downside to photos is that you're not looking at a real thing, so you can't see the dimensions of it. So you kind of have to guess where the light is falling, especially, you know, if your printer ink isn't really good at like capturing all the subtleties and the changes in light. So for here, I'm gonna do like, cause you know, mugs have the lids are like the tip portion. So I'm gonna do like a little highlight here, and I'm gonna add just a little bit more white, and we're gonna bring it on this side too, just so we get like the top portion, you know, because that's gonna reflect light, and it'll give a little bit of depth to your mug too. And then I'm just gonna add a little more white here. And if you can angle your brush so you just get like the tip on this corner here, we wanna bring that around on the side, and then I just stop about there. And I want to get some more white because I want like most of the light to be concentrated here. So I want this to be like a lighter, maybe even dab just like some white on the outside of it. And then I'm mixing this again. And I'm going to do kind of the same here. And bring that down. All right, so then just gonna get some more red back in here. I'm just gonna do like, so I have my highlight here, I have a white highlight, I have like a different kind of red around the edges, and now I want to do like a light highlight on the handle. And I think I'll do like a slight one on the side. And maybe just a little bit there. So at this point, if you're happy with your painting, you can stop and just let it dry. And then you can either do the outlines, if that's your preference. If you want like this like Art Deco look, you can go with the markers over the outlines and add the lines into your steam. If you want more of like the actual, you know, this is a mug coming off my painting here that and I'm trying to be a little more realistic. You can leave it as is, but maybe just let the steam dry and then go back over it with like some more, like a shade of white, so you can bring a little more fluffiness to the steam. I think I'm gonna fix this orange because I'm not sure that I like it. So I'm gonna clean my paintbrush. And I'm taking some red. And I'm just gonna paint over it with the red. And I'm gonna put a little bit of red down here too. All right, how does everyone feel about acrylic painting? If you're comfortable, you can turn your video on and just share what you ended up doing. If not, that's okay. It's just voluntary.
I will share. Just give me a few more minutes to finish up here. Thank you, Katie.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kara. Is it Kara or Kara? That looks awesome. Oh, wow, I like that. Ooh, that is pretty.
Kara.
Kara, okay. Nice, I like the orange background. That's really nice. Your mug looks good too. Yeah, that's pretty. I like how you can see the brush strokes on yours. Oh my goodness, Kim. Those look really nice too. Those are pretty. You guys did great. I'm loving these. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Kim.
Sorry, we had a great time.
Oh, good, I'm happy. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you all for joining me.
Okay, here's my gallery.
Hey, are we doing a paint, a pour paint thing too?
I'm sorry, what?
Are we gonna do a pour painting thing too?
Yeah, so I have 2 pour painting classes. I'm still planning them, and then I'll have kits available the week leading up to the class, like all my other painting classes.
Awesome, I'm gonna watch for them.
Okay, good.
Right. Thanks, Katie.
Oh, you're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you for joining. Your painting looked really pretty. You did a good job on that.
Thank you. Now it's in my hands too.
Oh yeah, I always end up with something. Ooh. Oh, great! You were painting from real life. I am so impressed. That is awesome.
Trying there. I'm still not done. I'm getting there.
Oh, I love it. And I love Heather. I love yours too. I like the orange background. It could be my camera, but I may not be seeing the right colors, but it looks really nice. And I like how you did your steam. Oh, very nice. Oh, great. Oh, good. You did the grid. That's very nice. How did that work out for you? I can't hear you, but I'm assuming it helped.
I am on mute, sorry. Now
Okay.
I'm unmuted. Yeah, I tried to do the same colors what you are doing there. So
Yeah, that looks awesome.
it worked. Thank you.
That turned out really good.
I enjoyed the class. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them. You can also do like a private chat. You just have to make sure you're sending it to just me if you don't want anyone else to see it. Oh, you're so welcome, Heather. I'm happy that you were able to join me tonight and that we did this. It's so much fun. And I think when you're with people doing the same thing, it kind of takes some of the pressure off. So hopefully you guys really enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you for some more painting classes in the future. I have another acrylic painting class, and I believe that's in 2 weeks. Then I'll be doing 2 pour painting classes. I think we're doing like a sports themed painting in August. Oh yes, you have a good night too, Bridget, and thanks again for joining me.
Yeah, Katie, I had a quick question.
Sure.
Yeah, so you were talking about adding a phrase possibly. So would you do that with paint too on the bottom or something maybe?
Yeah. So for me, I always like a cup of coffee first thing in the morning. And I think that's like the perfect amount of space. So I think that's what I'm gonna do here. And I want it to contrast, so I'm gonna do a lighter color. Yeah, you can use a Sharpie marker. Now, you might want to get a marker, like a Sharpie paint marker, so that it shows up. Because if you painted a darker color down here, it might get lost in how dark that is. So you want something with contrast. So if you get like one of those metallic ones, or if you get like a paint marker, I think Sharpie makes the paint ones, just get a lighter color and pick something with contrast in it so it shows up. But yeah, so I'll do that. I'm gonna do coffee first, just because that's my own personal motto. Oh, good.
Coffee o'clock.
I think the metallic markers are really cool. So they get all like shiny and they kind of have some pizzazz to them. All right, so I think what I'm gonna do is a light green, just because I have some green up here. There's a lot of dark down here, and I kind of want it to be in my color scheme here. And I guess I may be thinking Christmas, I don't know, but because I have so much red and green, but I'm gonna take some green here. And we're gonna mix. And I'm gonna take a little bit of my white. I'm trying to get the areas where I haven't already touched with paint. All right, so since I didn't draw the words down, I don't really have a guide. So I'm gonna try and be as careful as possible. And I'm not gonna do cursive. So originally I had it written in cursive here, but I'm not gonna do that. So I'm gonna do it kind of backwards because I wanna make sure I space everything out. So I'm gonna start with my T. All right, so I got that. Just gonna flatten out my brushes here where there's no paint. 'Cause a lot of it is pulling where I don't want it to be, and I want all the paint near the top of my bristles. So I have my T there. S's are kind of hard. So we're gonna do it, try to do it on like the edge as much as possible. And then, so I'm just gonna fix it because I've been pressing down here. I'm gonna do my R. This is where calligraphy comes in handy, but I've never done it with a paintbrush, so I don't know. Okay, I should be the easiest. A little dot here. And it's my F. I think I'll bring it up into the saucer. Okay, so that I got first. All right, now with coffee, I think this is gonna be a little harder. There's not as much space, and we got a lot of letters that kind of take up a lot of space too. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna angle it. So I'm gonna start with my C. And I'm just flattening out the tip of my paintbrush again.
I'm just thinking mathematically, because you have two F's and two E's and you don't have much space. You could do F squared and E squared. Just kidding.
Oh, that would be cute. I like that. Yeah, I'm gonna go at an angle. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna wait to put the diagonal lines in. Okay, so now I'm gonna add the diagonal, or I mean the horizontal lines for my F's. Coffee. Here's the E's. So I think what I'm trying to do here is make my E's or my coffee look like it's kind of turning into the steam a little bit. Or maybe I just had a cup and I'm super jittery.
Nilla had an even better idea. She said maybe misspell it and then you can say, oh, I didn't have my coffee first and that's why I don't know my spelling yet.
Oh my God, that is so cute. You know what? I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put another E right here. Coffee.
That would be good. I think once this dries a little bit, I'm going to write coffee o'clock, like wine o'clock or whatever.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yes. Okay, and I still have room right here, so I'm gonna add a exclamation mark because we definitely want to emphasize this. Okay, there, coffee first. And I think up here, I might put Yes. I think this is still wet, so if I want to add a third M, I'm gonna have to wait. Yeah, I think I'll wait and I'll put another M here. All right.
That looks lovely, Katie. Here, I'm going to show you my kind of final product, but yeah.
Okay, cool. Ooh. It's a little dark. Maybe you could get some light, some more light on there.
No, that's worse. No. There.
There. Ooh, I love that that blue. That is so pretty. That's very nice.
I'm clearly not an artist, but thank you. We had fun.
Oh, you are an artist, my dear. You just painted.
Switch up the video now.
I'm so happy that you guys had fun. Now you should have some paint left, so if you get something else you can paint, you can use the rest of the paint up.
Yeah, we will for sure.
Good, 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 good.
Thank you for being so patient with us.
Oh yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you very much.
You are so welcome.
Radhika, show us your mug one more time.
Oh, my son is doing something on that one.
Oh, that looks nice too.
He wants to do something on the side, so he sat besides me and then started. I want to write the coffee on the top, something he's doing. I said, okay, you can have some.
Oh, that's nice.
That looks nice too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
Bye, Neela.
Yeah, and hi,